Welcome to Real Talk Christian Podcast, where we drink coffee. And actually drink coffee this time, not that fake stuff like last episode, and have real conversations on faith, culture, and society. This is Marc Hyde.
And real coffee drinker, Chris Fuller.
Yes, sir. And today we are taking a listener question, and that question is this. What is the difference between righteous and unrighteous anger? You ready to do this thing, Fuller?
Let's go.
Let's go. Well, dude, that was the fastest intro we've ever done.
Well, I don't know about the fastest.
That was dang quick.
It's a pretty quick one.
I mean, it's comparison to like, you ready? Let's go. Bring it up. Oh, no, it's time to bring it back down.
Yeah, and then you.
Because in case you don't know, we have an exact cue when we drop the music back into our conversations.
Yeah, we do.
We work hard at this.
We try to hit the cue at the end, too, for the ending music, but we don't
Sometimes we nail
it,
sometimes we don't, and when we don't, we just
let it.
I lose all my marbles, and it just breaks and freaks out.
We just let it roll at that point. We're like, yeah, okay, it is what it is.
It is what it is. You know what I think is wild?
What's that?
That people can somehow listen to us at like 1.5 and 2 point speed.
I don't know
how, man.
How do you understand us?
Dude, I got my buddy Bobby King. He was like, yeah, dude, I listen. And I listen to all my podcasts at 2. No, he's a 2 point. He goes, but he's like, you talk so freaking fast. I got to turn you down to 1.5. Because you're too fast. And I'm like, sorry, bro. Sorry.
Maybe if we started talking like this. Those episodes would be like 4 hours long.
Well, yeah, that's how we start. We used to be like, well, welcome to Real Talk Christian Podcast, where we drink coffee and have real conversations.
Well, there was no intros.
Faith,
there was
culture, and society. That we were, bang. When people talk about the early days, we're like, I'm so sorry.
Like first 20 episodes, it was like very, very raw.
But you know what? It was a good time. My voice is cracked again. 2 episodes in a row. I keep looking at the screen and my hair is going nuts tonight.
You know what? It's not a podcast night unless you mention your hair or meatloaf. So those are the 2 things.
I didn't mention meatloaf last week, but it's good. And in fact, more and more people I've noticed are starting to cook their meatloaf in muffin tins. So you're welcome.
People have done that for a while. You didn't start a trend. I hate to tell you.
No,
that.
Beth did. Beth started the trend.
I hate to tell you, but people are like, yeah, the recipe. I pull out a recipe book and it said to put it in a tin. So it is not original, bro.
Oh, did you ever hear about making mashed potatoes with what does Amber do? Chicken broth, chicken bone broth.
I was
going through Instagram and one of my client friends, technically, she was talking about she has a very specific mashed potato recipe that she does, which Missy, Beth's little baby sister, does cream cheese in her mashed potatoes. So good.
I'm about to floor you with an idea, though.
With an idea. But I've never heard of chicken broth before for mashed potatoes. Apparently, it's fantastic.
Sure. So Janelle for Christmas took to my parents' house.
Okay.
They were like mashed potato muffin tops was almost what it was like. So it was like baked. So it was like a very soft bread that you could actually hold and like you could break, but you ate it and it was mashed potatoes. And it was like, this is glorious.
Has she made that for me before?
I don't think so. It was her first time making it.
I've had it from somewhere.
It was her first time making it. She like did a whole piping bag to pipe it all out to bake it. And like it was like so phenomenal.
Ooh, you know what'd be really tasty is that like in an air fryer. I wonder if that would be good.
I don't know about frying it. I mean, you could. It's potatoes. I mean, potatoes are always good fried.
What is it? You can crush them, you can mash them, you can put them in a stew. What is that from? What is that?
Lord of the Rings, bro.
Yes. Okay.
What do you want to do? Mash them, cook them, put them in a stew, or dice them? Because he's like, what's potatoes process? Dude,
stop! Oh, I hate that voice. Sorry, I just broke someone's eardrums. Was that with Frodo or was that with Bilbo from the that was Frodo, right?
That was him talking to Sam.
They were on the side of the mountain.
Yeah, it was 2 towers.
Yeah, they were on the side of the mountain.
So. No, it was when they were right before they saw the elephants.
Yeah,
the elephants. That's what Sam. The elephants, the big giant elephants.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while.
Call them elephants. Yeah. So speaking of Lord of the Rings, we had an interesting question from our friend Marissa Ladson in our Facebook community group, and she said, if you were a hobbit, would you prefer second breakfast or second dinner?
Beth and I already do second dinner.
Do you?
Yeah. Normally it's popcorn or a bowl of cereal.
I am a true hobbit, so I do all of it.
Even the hairy feet.
But I would prefer the second breakfast because you can't go wrong.
I don't even really eat breakfast normally. I eat maybe a granola bar. Maybe.
See,
I had apple, but I don't always eat breakfast and I don't always eat lunch. Depends on the day.
That's a problem. That's a
or
big
I'll eat
problem.
breakfast, but not really lunch. I'll eat I eat a snack like in like the early afternoon, like 1 or 2. I'll pop a little snack like an apple and maybe some like Cheez-Its or something.
And this is why he can't have box fans in his house, because he blows away.
No, it's because I eat 5 portions of dinner now because Beth cooks all this amazing food. But no, we always eat. We blame it on Lex, but we always eat again probably around 10:15. My go-to snack is always kettle corn. Never normal, but kettle corn popcorn.
But you can't blame Lennox, because even prior to Beth, you used to do that.
I have no self-control when it comes to food, man.
So you can't, because I remember podcasts, we'd be done and you'd be like in your fridge snacking
100%.
at like midnight.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, what are you
bowl
doing?
of cereal, bro. I would eat bowl of mini wheats all the time.
Well, I'm going to eat this bowl of cereal and then I'm going to binge watch some Madam Secretary and go to bed.
Yep.
I'm like, all right, bro.
That was my routine.
You do you, boo.
So here's another question inside the Facebook group. What prompted you to decide that this podcast was important to start, and did you know you'd be reaching so many lives by continuing?
I can honestly say we had no idea.
No stinking clue.
It started out of a conversation that started at Starbucks. We talked about this over in Rodney Buse, our friend for the podcast, and What Does the Bible Say. We had
we were interviewed by him, right?
Yeah. I think we did like a mashup with them, and I don't remember when that was. That was a while ago. But we kind of go through the whole story there. But basically, it was 2 guys hanging out in Starbucks having a conversation. We're like, hey, maybe other people want to hear this conversation, so let's hit the record. And we really just thought it was going to be like the student ministry that would listen to it, and maybe some people from church. And that's what it was for the first couple of months. I think we were having like downloads of like, oh, this week we got 30 downloads, and we were like, this is awesome, 30 downloads. That was crazy. And now, like, a normal day is right around 1,000 downloads. So definitely a different stance that the Lord has brought to this podcast. We never had any idea that it would reach globally what it has.
So I'm trying to find it, and
I don't know. We'd have to talk to Busey.
I'd have to talk with Buse unless they switched it, because I know for Water's Edge Church they redid how they were doing their podcast.
You know what though? Was it on Coffee Time with? Did we do the Coffee Time?
I think so. I think it was on a Saturday or something.
I think it was.
No. We did. I don't remember. But either way, we were interviewed. So Rodney, if you're listening, we got to get that link, because we got to figure out. Or I don't think we dropped it on our show, did we? I don't know.
Yes, I think we did.
But to answer the question, I mean, when we first started, we were just like, let's just do this thing and see what happens.
Yeah. We were excited for 30 people.
Now, I will say, because, I'm going to bring this conversation back in, because you know me, hyperfixation, with is podcasting through Sunday school. Now, some of this was also designed to be around the teaching ministry of Southside, too.
Right, but like I said, it was more meant for maybe a couple people at church, but mostly for the youth ministry is what we were thinking of. Hey, let's
youth
get
in college.
This. Yeah, so at the time you were the youth pastor at Southside, and so we were just like, hey, maybe we can use this as a teaching tool, extracurricular.
But it was supposed to be a part of the teaching ministry of Southside as a new ideas of Sunday school and stuff like that. Yeah. And because of it, we've actually seen someone saved, baptized, and join the Southside Baptist Church. Like, that cool.
I got the video on my phone of one of our listeners who came to the church.
Which is just so cool. So another question. This one was interesting. Okay. This one is, here's what are your thoughts on Bluey? I have a lot of friends who don't let their kids watch it. It's strange to me, but they say it's actually a really good show.
I don't think you read that right. They don't let them? I thought they did. They don't have kids, but they watch it, I thought is what it said.
Oh, no. Thoughts on Bluey. I have a lot of friends who don't have kids who watch it. So, okay.
Yeah.
So they don't have kids, but they watch it. So what's your thoughts on Bluey?
So this household, the Fuller household, is a huge Bluey fan.
So are the Hydes.
The stories, the relatability, I guess, would be a good word for it. The life lessons that are taught in Bluey.
It's like OG Mr. Rogers.
It's like Mr. Rogers, but cartoony and a little bit more modern.
But it's not Daniel Tiger.
But it's not. No, it's not Daniel Tiger.
Love me some Daniel Tiger.
But I do like Daniel Tiger. But no, I think Bluey's great. I think it's awesome. I love Bandit. I wish that I could be Bandit. He's got a job. He's an archaeologist, if you ever knew that. Nope. I don't know if you picked those.
I don't really watch it that much. I just know the kids love it. And
so
Beth watches
there's
it
some details of his office where you can kind of see some like historical stuff. And I'm like, I wonder if he's an archaeologist. So I looked it up one day, and he actually
sure is
an archaeologist. So, but he's at home a lot, and so he does a lot with his girls, his kids, Bluey and Bingo.
I work from home, man. Don't come in my office.
And they do a lot of playing and all this stuff. And the mom, they're like, both parents are really involved. They love each other.
But I have heard some pushback on Bluey, though, about in regards to, the kids are very, 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 very whiny. I've heard that.
They can be, but the reason, so Bluey was originally not made for kids. It was made for adults. It was originally an adult show. They made for adults. But the kids loved it. So it was supposed to be like those kids are really whiny, and it was helping parents see how to relate better to their kids in a healthier environment is how it was originally supposed to go. And so how Bandit and how Chili deal with Bluey and Bingo is more showing like how a more healthy way to talk with and deal with your children in those instances.
I think the one thing I struggle with it, though, is the fact of every episode, their mom and dad are always playing with them at all times. And especially when I work from home. Unrealistic. It's unrealistic. And I work from home. So they could be like, are you done with work yet, Dad? No, it's 11 a.m. I just came up for an apple.
But they're not showing like the entire day either. They're showing snippets throughout the day or different scenes throughout the week.
But long story short, we here for some Bluey.
I'm all for the life lessons that are in Bluey. So
okay,
one more question, and then we got to get moving.
Just
on.
one?
Yeah, we got. Dude,
Dang,
we're already out.
So good. Okay, here's a good one.
11.5 minutes.
This one's from Kiera. She says, "What was the moment you had your first wow? God really is real thought, or was it more just an overtime type of thing? When did you have your first like, whoa, God's what's up? He's real.
I would say it was for me, anyways. It wasn't really a moment, but a lifetime of little moments.
Okay,
with some big moments in between.
We also were raised somewhat in the church.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. So I mean, to me,
I don't say somewhat. That's not true. But we were raised like we weren't like quote unquote pagans who became saved in our late 20s. Like we were always around Christianity.
I mean, the biggest wow moment for me is hitting the lowest of the low in my life, and that was, I'm losing my house. I'm sitting with a sinus infection, bronchitis, and 2 pink eyes. Losing my apartment because my little brother and me he didn't pay the rent. I gave him my half of the rent, and he never paid it for like 3 or 4 months. So we were getting evicted. Didn't have any place to go.
Out.
Didn't have. Yeah, sorry, Zach. I love you, buddy.
Hey, you just dropped his name.
That wasn't meant as bad towards you. Zach's a good dude. So,
but facts are facts.
But during all this, I turned on the TV and like a sermon came on, and I don't remember. I think he was talking about the Exodus, and I don't remember exactly what part of the Exodus he was talking about, but I remember thinking it was John Hagee actually, which I don't even listen to John Hagee. He's an old school. 4 Blood Moons. You ever heard that book, The 4 Blood Moons? I don't really now that I've gone into theology a lot more. I don't agree with a lot of his stances on things.
But that's who it was
at that
on.
time, man,
That's
it was like,
who it was
bam,
on.
it like hit me like a brick of rocks. That was like the biggest aha moment. And at that time, Janelle had already been praying for me because we were dating and I wasn't living right. But yeah, that was like, if I had to say the biggest aha moment, that would be it. But there was a lot of aha moments along the way that showed that God was real for me.
You know, when I look back, I mean, it's one of those hindsight's 20/20. We can see God working in so many different ways. Sure. You know, going back to episode 1, does your past determine your future?
Yeah.
I still think we need to revisit that episode, man, because there's been a lot that's happened in the last few years.
Like a recap.
Yeah, well, up to date episode. But you know, I look back and it's like I remember being 16 at a revival fest. Revival.
Yep.
And it was Farm Fest. It was for teenagers. And I remember saying, whatever God wants to do with my life, I'm all in. Like for lack of a better word, screw it. I'm going all in. Like that's I remember having that feeling when I was like 16 and answering the call to, not call to ministry, because that wasn't the call. The call was you don't care what it's going to look like. You're following Jesus with your life in terms of vocationally or whatever it is. I said, yeah, I'm in. It wasn't right. A salvation baptism call. It was more of just I'm becoming an adult. It's time to step up and,
sure.
When I became a man, it's time to be a man type thing.
Put away childish things.
And that's when I just started looking into Bible colleges and wanting to become a pastor and all the different things. And
which was a calling for your life,
yeah.
Not a calling for everybody's life.
Yeah, that's just sure. The route that I was able to take.
Yeah,
and
cool.
Then I remember there was a specific time though in Bible college. Man, this thought just came up to my head just a second ago, where I don't remember what it was about, but I remember being in my dorm room by myself freshman year with my good old New King James. I bought that Bible. intentionally to go to college with a fresh Bible because there's nothing better.
I
than
did
a
the
fresh
same
Bible.
thing at PCC.
I had a fresh Bible going in.
I've still
New
got it
King
somewhere over there.
James. I think I got rid of mine. Maybe it's not much. I had way too many Bibles and I had to get rid of some. I think I had like 8. And so, but I remember, I highlighted the snot out of James and 1 John and 1 Peter and then 2 John and Colossians.
Mine's
and
Psalms.
all over and that's where I love. I mean, I talk about the epistles all the time on this show. Right. I love them. And I remember breaking down, and I'm like, this is not. If you know me, this is not in my nature. I remember breaking down, crying, and falling on my knees, and just being like, "All right, God." Like I don't remember the thoughts. I don't remember the prayer. I just remember going the fact of
the surrender
of this is what's up. This is where we're going. Let's. It was another like, all right, God, you're real. Let's do this.
It was a let's go.
Yep. And then I think there's been a lot of other small moments, especially with the life circumstance and hand that I was dealt, and being able to interview Beth and being able to marry her and seeing all the different things. And just because things are good and a blessing doesn't make it easy, because right now we're going through a crap load of hard with kids coming in and kids that we already have. And it's hard, but I would say if I ever had the first like, wow, God is really like, he's real moment. It's the only time I felt it in the actual moment, I would say, was that call to following Jesus, whatever calling he had in my life when I was 16. And the other one, I was probably about 18 or 19 freshman year of college. Those were the two where I'm like, holy crap, God's real. Let's get after it. Let's get it. Let's do something.
Well, that was the podcast for the day. So
there you go. That was a good one, man. But today,
good, man. I like that.
I don't know how to say. Oh,
here's the thing, right? So today we're drinking.
I'll say, man, I feel good. That was an emotional little conversation.
I don't really want to move on from it, but we kind of have to.
Dude, we can make a whole conversation out of this. Should we do it?
No.
Should we do it?
No.
Oh, okay.
We're
maybe
at 17
next
minutes.
time.
Well, you know what? This is good content for next week.
Sorry, Kira. Maybe we'll have a new episode for you next time.
Well, not next week, but the week after, maybe.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Maybe we'll revisit it. So, but tonight we're drinking a Guatemalan from Costco.
Which is, okay, well, first off, pause. Last week's coffee sucked.
Yeah, the power coffee.
No, that crap was awful. That was, Janelle, you do not owe me a bag of M&Ms, even though you ate all of my M&Ms that we featured last time we recorded, because I just wasted your $3 on whatever that stupid drink was that Fuller bought, and you still have another full one in your fridge.
Yeah, that's for her to try, so we'll get her reaction.
Make her try it before we talk about it.
Oh, okay.
Because then she'll be like, I want to try this. You guys are trying to set me up for something gross. Like I can actually see her head going, ew.
Well, then we can't mention it tonight because she won't drink it tonight because it'll be too late, but I'll have her drink it tomorrow.
Yep. Just say we have opinions, but we want you to try it.
Maybe she'll let me take a video when she's trying it.
Don't ask permission. It's easier to seek forgiveness than permission, Fuller, so just do it.
That's true.
But either way, so last week we had some crap coffee. Yeah. We're like, we're going to fix this. We'll get some real good stuff. And so first off, Guatemalan is one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's one of mine too.
But this is from Costco.
From Costco. I was a little nervous.
Weird.
I have not had a chance with everything that's going on to do any type of roasting recently for the past 3 months. And so we've been buying store-bought coffee, and it's always
you gotta do what you gotta do, man.
It's always a bear to find a coffee that I actually enjoy. But so I was like, well, we're going to try this tonight. And so I broke it out, and we made it up, and it's like, oh, this isn't bad for store-bought coffee. So, yeah, it's their Guatemalan blend from Costco.
And either this is a amazing cup of coffee, or the other stuff was so bad that this just tastes like an angel in a cup.
Right.
Like, I don't know, man. Angel in a cup? That sounds really weird. Can I rephrase that?
No.
Like
angel in a cup.
Angel gave me coffee in a cup.
We should make a shirt now. I'm just an angel in a cup.
That's weird. But either way, so this coffee, I'm drinking on my Notre Dame Go Irish, Fight Irish cup.
I've got our Engedi Music Fest coffee cup.
Which, sign up, baby. We're going to be back. Hopefully we'll be back.
It's going to be the Revive Fest now. It's no longer called it's
I'm here for the
formerly
new
known
name.
as Engedi.
I am here for the new name.
But I'm glad we got in it just enough time to make a cup like this right before they changed the name.
Legendary. But so we're drinking some good coffee, not that junk from last time. There was an interesting group in the conversation in Facebook about what's your top coffees, and I had store-bought coffee, and Caribou was one of all-time my favorite store-bought. You hate Caribou.
That's all he used to drink is Caribou coffee.
Beth and I went to Caribou the other day intentionally out of the way because I wanted a cup, and it was a dang good cup. I love me some Caribou. They sell a travel mug with a flask attachment now. At Caribou.
That's terrible. That's how bad the coffee is. You got to put liquor in it.
No, I texted my buddy who's from Minnesota. I'm like, so is this what y'all do in Minnesota? You guys just have a flask of coffee? He goes, dude, winters are hard up here, bro.
Yeah.
We got to get through somehow. And I'm like, dude, that's hilarious.
Terrible coffee
and he's a fellow
and
youth
whiskey.
pastor, so it makes it even funnier. But either way, we're drinking some good coffee. None of that other junk, man. And we've had some good conversations. We're at the 20-minute marks. We got to read the review, and we got to get into this conversation because this was asked to us to answer on the podcast.
Yes. So I'll go ahead and read it so you can get ready and save your voice a little bit. Yeah, do your neck crack thing and, everything else. Go adjust the camera if you need to.
Wiggle.
So today it's a 5-star review. It's called New Christian from Pluhsbu. Pluhsbu. Pleuhsb. Pluhsbu.
Plus South Bend?
Pluhsbu. I like Pluhsbu better. All right, so here we go. You guys are amazing. I always thought I was a Christian until I actually gave my life to Christ 9 months ago. You guys helped me with my life and how to be a Christian in today's world. Y'all hit topics that I have wondered how to react in the real world. Sweet. Well,
that's awesome, man. That's just cool.
Please reach out to us with your name and address because you have a little mini swag bag coming to you for leaving a review, and we appreciate you and your review. And if you have not already left a review in the Apple Podcast or on Spotify or on YouTube or on any of the places, Facebook, whatever,
do that.
You need to do that.
You can leave reviews on Facebook, guys.
If you really like the show,
yep.
If you think we have biblical truth,
yep.
It's a good way to help that truth get into the ears of other listeners.
Or if you feel guilted by us asking so much.
Well, we ask every episode. So, yeah, if you haven't already, please do that because it helps the algorithms and it helps us get into the ears of new listeners just like you.
Yep, and before moving on, public service announcement. Beth,
we should do
my brother-in-law Joe and my sister Amanda, stop texting in the group chat because my iPad is going nuts. Get your own group chat.
What they can't hear.
See, look, Beth just texted again.
I know, but they can't hear you, bro.
Well, Joe will hear this in like 3 months, and he'll be like, "Sorry, bro."
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Anyways, let's set this up, bro, because now you just like we
See,
had.
There's Amanda.
We had a good flow going into the topic, and now you just took a hard, sharp right turn.
That's true. Hold on, airplane mode. Where's airplane mode? Do I not have airplane? There it is. I'm blind as a bat. All right, so airplane mode's off or on. We're good to go. Okay, so this conversation was actually brought to us from a listener, and this was the exact quote of the question of what's the difference between righteous and unrighteous anger, which instantly sets a what's the word I'm looking for? It sets the framework of not even just stating that there is such a thing as righteous or unrighteous anger, but I think there's an even question behind the question of is there such a thing as righteous anger? Because in the Bible, we read, and this is the primary passage that we talk about in the verse that most people will think about, where it says, be angry, but don't sin. Coming out of the Apostle Paul, we read that passage where it says, be angry and don't sin. There's also the passage where Paul takes it from, I don't know if I wrote it down or not, but he takes it from the book of Psalms, actually, where David actually writes this down, where he talks about be angry and don't sin. But then the Apostle Paul continues on and says, don't let the sun go down in your anger and don't give the devil an opportunity. And so when we see this passage, we see two different truths, okay? One, we see the fact of when you're angry, don't sin. Like, that's just ground rule number one.
Yep.
If you're angry, don't sin. However, there is the unique little allowance here where it says, be angry and don't sin. So the question that I think that we're wrestling with is how can we be angry and not sin?
Sure.
And then just the question of how does that work and how do we deal with anger in such a way where if we do get angry, how do we not sin? And is there such things that it's okay to actually be angry about? And so to understand the passage in its context, which is what we like to do all the time. You didn't read the show notes. Bro,
nope, I
got the whole stinking chapter written
I was just making sure that we were going to read it in context,
and in fact,
man.
normally when I do my show notes, just fun fact, I normally don't use a physical printed Bible. I'm usually like, because it's easier just to copy paste it from the internet.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot easier.
I go to the either the Bible Hub or
I go to BibleGateway.com.
or Bible Gateway and go CSB, and then you can look at it all in context and just highlight and paste. That's what I do.
Because most of the time, like you and I, as we're studying the scriptures, we'll have verses that come to mind, and it's like, oh shit, we typed that in. It's like, I don't remember the references. So boop, we find it real fast.
Right.
Read the context, copy, paste, we're good to go. But this one, I'm like, nope, I got to get the whole context.
Yeah.
And I even wanted to see the entire pericope. So I busted out not my CSB, I busted out my HCSB, my Holman Christian Standard.
Old school.
You know why? Because it was right next to me, and my CSB's upstairs.
Because you like it better?
No, it's actually bigger print. I used to joke that was my teaching Bible because the print. I intentionally bought a Bible with bigger print so I can see it from farther away.
Gotcha.
It's not like old lady print. It's more like middle-aged print. How about that?
All right.
It's for you, Jim. It's a print for you.
All right. Anyways, let's read this in context.
I'm a little hyper now since I've had real coffee and my cup's gone. But Ephesians, we're going to read a whole lot of scripture to get the context around the idea of be angry and do not sin. So starting in Ephesians 4:17, we're going to read all the way through chapter 5, verse 2. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Here we go. Therefore, I say this, speaking of Paul, therefore I say this and testify in the Lord, you should no longer walk as Gentiles do in the futility of their thoughts. They are darkened in their understanding, excluded from the life of God, because of the ignorance that is in them and because of the hardness of their hearts. They became callous and gave themselves over to promiscuity for the practice of every kind of impurity with a desire for more and more. But that is not how you came to know Christ, assuming you heard about him and were taught by him as the truth in Jesus, to take off the former way of life, the old self that is corrupted by deceitful desires, to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to put on the new self, the one created according to God's likeness in righteousness and purity of the truth. Therefore, putting away lying, speak the truth, each one to his neighbor, because we are members of one another. Be angry and don't sin. Don't let the sun go down on your anger, and don't give the devil an opportunity. Let no thief no longer steal. Instead, he is to do honest work with his own hands, so that he has something to share with anyone in need. No foul language should come out of your mouth, but only what is good for building up someone in need, so that it gives grace to those who hear. And don't grieve God's Holy Spirit. You were sealed by him for the day of redemption. Let all bitterness, anger, wrath, shouting, and slander be removed from you, along with all malice. And be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving one another, just as God forgave you in Christ. Therefore, be imitators of God as dearly loved children. Verse 2, and walk in love, so that Christ also loved us and gave himself for us, a sacrificial and fragrant offering to God. You whipped up your Bible. That means you're thinking about something.
You know me. I'm always thinking.
So should I continue or wait?
Continue on. I'm just looking at for my own reference.
Okay, so part of last week's episode, we talked about false teachers and the fact that they don't always exegete the scripture well and try to break the passage down to make sure we see what the Bible is actually saying. So today, we gonna break this passage down, all right? This is almost like sermon style, all right? So we're gonna break down this passage to help us understand what is going on in this passage, and then we'll talk about where else does it talk about anger in the Bible, and then what should we do with all of this?
So just real fast, why before we get into that.
Yep.
Psalms 4:5 is what Paul
Psalm 4:5.
was
Thank you. Okay.
Yep. So,
and now, what does that say? Do you have it?
I don't, but I can pull it up.
Oh man, I thought you was ready.
No, I was not ready. Whoops. Wrong. Psalm 4 CSB 5 said. Well, we'll do 4. It says, "Be angry and do not." Whoa! It just updated on me.
It's called cumulative layout shift.
Let's go. Let's go to one. Let's go to 1, and we'll read.
Yeah, did I read it? Yep.
So it says, "Answer me when I call, God, who vindicates me, who you freed me from affliction. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. How long, exalted ones, will my honor be insulted? How long will you love what is worthless and pursue a lie? Selah. Know that the Lord has set apart the faithful for himself. The Lord will hear when I call to him. Be angry and do not sin. Reflect in your heart while on your bed, and be silent, Selah. Offer sacrifices in righteousness and trust in the Lord. Many are asking, who can show us anything good? Let the light of your face shine on us, Lord. You have put more joy in my heart than they that have the grain and new wine abound. I will both lie and sleep in peace, for you alone, Lord, make me live in safety."
So when the Apostle Paul wrote, "Be angry and don't sin," he's taking that directly from David.
Yeah, he's quoting that from Psalms 4.
Which is interesting because you see the title of Psalm 4. It says a nighttime prayer, I think is what it says, a nightly prayer of David.
It says, "For the choir director with stringed instruments, a night prayer, the Psalm of David."
And so as David, this is a night prayer to think about when you're going down and laying sleep. It's the fact of be angry yet don't sin. The Apostle Paul then adds, and don't even let the sun...
Which is talking about they're lying in their, David's saying he's lying in the peace of God. I think that's probably a reference to that.
And so part of understanding the Bible is not just looking at one verse and going from there, but we got to understand all the things that are going on in context.
Sure.
So when you look at this whole specific passage from Ephesians 4:17-5:2, we can see that Christians are called to live a different life. Although we are Christians, we are called to do the hard work, though, of taking off the old self. So as Christians, we're called to live differently. We're called to live set apart in terms of our actions, in terms of how we talk about people and the words that we use and how we respond to people. And if we do cause someone to sin, we are supposed to if someone sins against us or we sin against each other, we're supposed to forgive one another in the same way that Christ forgave us. So Christians off the bat are supposed to live their lives in such a unique way that is different than everybody else. Although it still is a struggle to pull off the old man. Right. Because it talks about the fact of, where does it talk about the old man? Here it goes. But this is how you came to know Christ, assuming you heard about him, verse 21, and were taught by him as the truth in Jesus Christ, to take off your former way of life, the old self that is corrupted, and be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and put on the new self. So there's a level of, there's the old self that we take off, we have to put on the new self, but let's be honest, it's a struggle.
Yeah,
it's definitely a struggle to keep on the new self. And then the question then becomes is, okay, so Christians are called to live a different life. So what type of different life are Christians supposed to call? And in the passage that talks about we're supposed to put away lying and speak the truth.
Yep.
Like speak the truth, stop lying. Number 2 is be angry and don't sin, and don't even let it go into tomorrow. That's what don't let the sun set on your wrath.
Means take care of the
like before you fall asleep.
Yep,
like before the day is even done.
Yep.
Another one is don't steal, but actually work hard.
Yep.
And it even talks about not even just work hard, but so that way you have something to show for your work that you can be proud of, so you can give as needed.
Sure.
To be generous with that. Another one is only speak words that build other people up. And the other one is the removing of bitterness, anger, wrath, shouting, and slander.
So it sounds like live righteously and holy. Mm-hmm. That's what it sounds like.
And so that's what a Christian is called to do.
Right.
And so before we even move on, Pastor Marc's coming out. My question is, when people look at your life, do they see you as different than everybody else? Or do you blend in with the crowd in such a way where, a lot of Christians, I think, blend into the crowd because we're just quiet, reserved, and we do what we need to do.
Sure.
But not just blend in, but more the fact of if all your buddies look around and they're like, I don't know if that guy's any different. I don't know if Bill's really any different than us. I mean, sure, he goes to church. Sure, he does whatever. Sure, he does what he's supposed to do. But,
right.
He's still a homie. There ain't no different. Or it's like...
Does your life go against the current?
Yeah. And not in such a way where you're trying to be a weird Amish person.
No.
But just in such a way where you are forgiving people. You're being
right.
kind with your words.
Yep.
You're not tearing people down. You're actually confessing your sins
stealing,
if you hurt somebody.
You're not sinning when you're angry. You're not lying. You're doing all these things right.
Yeah, definitely. So here's a fun question then, okay? So coming out of this passage, why would Paul say, be angry but don't sin, but then instantly say, put away the anger? Because at the beginning of this passage, it talks about be angry and don't sin. But at the very end here in, I want to get that verse, make sure I got it right. Where it says put away.
4:25.
Is that it?
Near the end of 25 or 26. Beginning of 26.
No, here we go. Verse 31. Let all bitterness, anger, wrath, shouting, slander be removed from you.
Sure.
So in the one token, the Apostle Paul says, be angry, don't sin. But then he says, stop it. Put it away.
Sure.
Don't be angry anymore. So how could he say, you can be angry but don't sin, but make sure you put anger away? Isn't that kind of a contradiction in terms here?
Well, do you want me to give my opinion now, or because I didn't read the show notes on this one, so
let's just go for it. Give me your opinion.
So my Fuller opinion time.
Shit into gear. Thus saith the Fuller.
Thus saith the Fuller. In light of our last episode,
that sounded like a weird off-brand Mario. Okay.
I'm the what is it? The Mexican version. Oh, donde estado?
We're white. We can't do that.
So
Joe's Italian. What's up, Joe?
Anyways, you got to do it like this. You got to talk with your hands. Sorry. Anyways, my opinion of this is, what's the difference if you see a beautiful woman walk by and your mind looks and then you go, no, and you don't dwell on it. But you see something beautiful, and then you turn away from it real fast.
Okay.
Where's the sin?
There isn't one.
Okay. Now, what if I stared at the beautiful woman and just stared and then started getting into thoughts?
Yum.
Okay, so I think
probably not.
I think that, probably sinning with a little lust right there, right?
A little bit of lust.
So
we know what Jesus says about that.
I think in a moment of fire out, like, oh, I'm angry. And then you're like, no, I shouldn't be angry. I think you're not dwelling upon the sin, right? I think it becomes sin when you continue to dwell on it and you're just pounding it in and you're just like, just want to. But if you like catch yourself, I think that's where it's like be angry but sin not, right? So I got angry, but then I'm like, no, I got to rein myself in. I can't act this way.
All right, so I'm going to put a pin in that. Boop. We're going to put a pin in it because we're going to bring that back out and then maybe talk about what happens if we let anger, wrath, and bitterness reign in our lives. What happens to us then? So moving on, because if this was the only passage we had talking about anger, we could figure out what to do with it. But the Bible has a lot of other passages regarding about anger, and what's wild is the Solomon, the wisest man ever to live, even though he had a whole bunch of wives and concubines, and that's probably not a good idea. We probably should listen to our Sister Wives episode, Solomon. You probably should have done that before you did that. But he has a lot to say about anger as well. So, but we're going to start in the book of James and then just hit a bunch of other verses that talk about specifically with anger. So James 1:19 through 20 says this: "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires." Right. Proverbs 29:11 says, "Fools give full vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end." Ecclesiastes 7:9, "Don't let your spirit rush to get angry, for anger abides in the heart of fools." Don't pity the fool, because they full of anger. Right, Proverbs 15:18, "A hot-tempered person stirs up the conflict, but the one who is patient calms a quarrel." Colossians 3:8 echoes what we've already read in Ephesians 4, where Paul says, But now you must also rid yourself of all such things as these: anger, rage, malice, slander, and filthy language from your lips." And then Matthew 5, going back to the Sermon on the Mount, what do they call that in The Chosen? His sermon.
His sermon, yeah.
Jesus' sermon. Matthew 5:21 to 26, he says, "You have heard it, sir, that it was said to our ancestors, 'Don't murder, and whoever murders will be subject to judgment.' But I tell you, everyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Whoever insults his brother or sister will be subject to the court. Whoever says, 'You fool,' will be subject to hellfire. So if you are offering a gift at the altar, and there you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled with your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift," which was super cool to see Andrew and Mary with that scene after Jesus talking about that.
I loved it.
So cool.
I loved it.
It continues. It says, "Reach a settlement quickly with your adversary, while you are on your way with him to the court, or your adversary will hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the officer, and you'll be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will never get out of there until you have paid the last penny." I mean, the biggest thing is more the fact of just reconcile yourself. That's what Jesus talked about, is in the midst of all of this, don't let anger stir up and do all these different things, say you fool, because you're going to end up looking like a fool in the end. Be reconciled and do what you got to do in that. And then to finish with Proverbs 14:29 says, "Whoever is patient has great understanding, but one who is quick-tempered displays folly." So here's the question. I'm going to unpin you. What do we do with all of this? What do we do with all this, boss?
We read it. No, I think it goes back into what I was going to continue to say, of in that moment of quick anger, but catching myself. I don't think you're sinning, but I think you are displaying folly, as Proverbs says, because you're quick-tempered, which is something that I think the sanctification process that we go through as we continue to walk with Christ and the Holy Spirit continues to change our hearts through prayer, through meditation, through scripture reading, through being together with brothers and sisters, that slowly gets changed. But I think as human beings, we're naturally triggered by things, right? But it's what do we do with that? Do we dwell on it? Do we continue to reign with anger? I think of my kids, right? There's times I get angry, right?
Yeah, if you don't get angry at your kid, you ain't a parent.
Yeah. So you get angry, but then
not saying it's acceptable.
But then you catch yourself and you feel terrible about how angry you got, right? I think that's a good thing, right?
And a lot of times, I mean, there's also the question of why are you angry? A lot of times we get angry if people do things about us because it's our own pride that gets hurt, or we get super angry because someone does something against us that we just don't like. Sometimes we're angry because of outside circumstances that are outside of our control, so we just lash out in whatever way we're supposed to do. And none of those ways are good, because, I mean, even it's all over Proverbs, the fact of, if you got rage and anger, fools give it the time of day.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there is a thing there that if you are angry and you're angry often, that you're considered a fool. And yeah, you got some work to do, bro.
And so when we're talking about like unrighteous anger, a lot of times when someone does something against us, I mean, dude, I've watched
injustice.
Like, okay, so I had to go, I can talk about this a little bit. So I had to go to jury duty, right?
Yep.
The only reason why I had to go to jury duty was because two people got mad and let their anger get way out of control, and a weapon got pulled out, and it just got crazy.
Sure.
And literally, it was all that needed to be done was people just had to calm themselves. If people just calmed themselves and went,
check
that was
yourself
not okay.
before you wreck yourself.
That person was a jerk. That person, did a terrible move.
Right.
We're both idiots. My bad, your bad, whatever, but it is what it is. I'm not starting to fight. Somebody would not have been told, guilty or, well, actually, we can say he was deemed guilty because he let road rage get the best of him.
Right.
We watched road rage, Beth and I, one time where like a dude almost drove a guy into like the middle of they were trying to they were racing. You could tell they were mad and trying to get off an exit. And it looked like one person was trying to drive the other person into the wall in the median. And it's just like, yeah. Why? You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to hurt everybody else around you. And I think that's a good example of when we let our anger go untapped. And to be honest with you, anger was a struggle that I dealt with a lot as a kid.
Sure.
And a lot as, I would say, a young teen.
Hey, your bro did anger management as a kid, so I get it.
Yeah, but and I thought I was over my anger issues, but now dealing with a lot of the junk that I had been dealing with, I'm like, man, I got a long way to go specifically with my anger.
Sure.
And sometimes the person who gets the brunt of my anger, no matter which person it is, they didn't do anything to deserve that type of anger. In fact, if it was the kid, it's like, I got to apologize for lashing out. If it was Beth, I got to apologize for, saying a jerk comment off the cuff because I was just angry and I was just upset. Right. Or, all these different things. So I do think there's a level of understanding of,
you got to catch
being
yourself.
angry and venting, and it talks about, a fool gives vent to their rage. Don't let your spirit rush to get angry because it bites on the heart of a fool. If you're hot-tempered, you're going to stir up conflict. A lot of times, we bring our own, I'm going to use the word calamity.
Sure.
And we bring calamity upon ourselves, which then puts us into even more danger. And it's like the classic schoolyard thing where it's like, it's not the first person that gets in trouble, it's the person who makes the response that gets in trouble.
Yeah. So, is there appropriate ways to handle being angry at people and in our actions?
I'm gonna kind of jump normally I ask you the tough questions, man, and now you're asking me. I think there's a level of asking the question of what are you angry about, why are you angry about it, and what caused that anger? Because I do think there are different levels of anger. There's angers where if you hurt my pride and my ego. There's anger where if you hurt my kids. There's anger if you hurt my friends, or there's anger if you do an injustice towards my wife.
Yeah.
I think there's different types of anger and different levels of anger, and we have to first understand why we're angry and what we're angry about. Because a lot of times, if we're angry because someone has done something to us, that's an initial gut response of, you did this and that made me angry.
Sure.
But, I think it's the same idea of, like what you said, somebody can we did the example of a woman walking down the street and she's just gorgeous, right?
Right.
Like it's not a sin for her to look that way. It's a sin for us to look at her and go,
and start lusting.
Right. Like that's the sin. It's not the sin of like even like, okay, like this is the example I use. Like if you're driving in Chicago, you're going to see billboards for strip joints and gentlemen's clubs and like all the different things. It's one thing to look at that and be like, nope. Bounce the eyes. It's not a sin to look at something because stuff's going to pop up.
Things are going to catch our eye.
The sin is when you have no self-control and you just dive in a little bit deeper.
Well, you continue to stare at it. You start to put heavy thought into it. You start to dwell upon it. That's where the sin is.
That's where the sin is. But then we're not talking about that one. But when we go to anger, some of it is the fact of something's going to cause you to get angry. And so many times, I think when we let it fester and boil and we think about it, it just wreaks havoc. And generally, at least from my own opinion, or not my own opinion, but from my own life and experience and circumstances, generally, I am more likely to fall into sin if I'm not in a good place in general.
Right.
Like I'm more angry, like I'm more quick to get really angry and, for lack of a better word, really pissy if I'm not having good days because of.
You can't say that word.
Oh, I can't. I'm sorry. Ticked off.
You can't say that word. It said so.
No, it just says no. It doesn't say anything that builds up. Yeah, look at it in context, boss.
Huh?
But at the end of the day, with this idea is the fact of if I'm not in a good place mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I'm more likely to act out and sin because of what was done against me. So we can't control no foul language come out of your mouth, but only what is good for building up.
Was that good for building up?
Mm-hmm. No, because I'm about to drop a truth bomb.
You can't use that word and say, "Yeah, I use that word to build up." Come on now.
Yes, I can. So,
You're lying to yourself, bro.
Yeah. But anywho, so with this, some of the times the fact of if someone sins against me or someone sins against something,
sure.
The question is that's what their choice is, but how do I respond out of that? I think that's what a lot of it goes down to. So is there such a thing as righteous anger and unrighteous anger? I think unrighteous anger takes what people do, and then we respond in such a way where it goes back to over here where it talks about a lying tongue and cutting down people with our words and being unkind with our hands and being, whatever we want to do to put people back in their place because our egos were hurt or our feelings were hurt or these different things, and we just lash. I think it's the lashing out that's a sin.
I think it's just
a lot of spitballing.
I think it's leaving anger unchecked, right?
Okay.
Because there is righteous anger, in my opinion. There's righteous anger and there's unrighteous anger. And unrighteous anger is anything that is hurt my ego or I think is unjust or it's all about my opinion on it. Mm-hmm. And I think righteous anger is like the anger in the sense of I'm angry at sin. Right. And I think that angry because it aligns with God's anger towards sin and towards the things that go against God.
We'll go down that trail because if we're supposed to be following Jesus and have the same mind of Christ, and we see God getting angry about certain things, is that acceptable for us to get angry about?
Well, I think it's acceptable in the correct context of being angry about it. Right. So okay. I'm angry at the injustice of racism, right?
As he should.
If I'm angry about racism, I think that's a righteous anger, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's a righteous anger to be angry at the racist things that happen. I think it starts turning into unrighteous anger when I start thinking about I'm going to hurt somebody because of it. I'm going to do something, outside of the law, unloving, unkind, as a retribution because that person or that system is doing that outside of the righteous way to deal with it, which is to go and speak the truth in love and to deal with it in the ways that God would have us deal with it, right? We can't forsake the rest of Scripture because we go, well, God's angry at that injustice too. No, we have to fall in line with the Scripture and the way we're supposed to deal with it as Christians, right? That's when we run for office, right? Get into politics and things and try to change it through the laws aspect. If we see a social injustice of racism, hey, we got laws that already protect against that. You call the police in that instance. There's things that we can do that I think.
But what if that's not good enough? What if that doesn't just because we can talk about You look throughout all of history, anytime a law or a thing has been changed, it's because people were willing to step up and go against what the law said. Slavery, we have slavery, and people went against that. And we had people who were fleeing slavery.
So you're talking about
the North.
But you're talking about two different things here. I'm talking about working within the laws we have to deal with that injustice. Right. You're talking about laws that go against and make it unjust.
Right.
That's two different things.
What I'm saying, though, is what if the law isn't good enough?
Then, well...
You know what I'm saying? Like, we have laws that deal with the injustice, but what if the system is already broke?
Well, you can't go against the laws of God.
Okay.
Right? So you can't be a vigilante. Sorry. Right. It goes against the laws of God.
I agree.
Right? Because you can't hate it. To hate your brother is to murder. That's what Christ says, right? Mm-hmm. So you can't do that. Christ says if your brother slaps you on one side of your cheek, you should turn the other side of your cheek, right? So there's ways to do that. We're supposed to speak the truth in love. We're supposed to forgive our enemies. We're supposed to do these things, right? Love those who don't love us. Love those and bless those who persecute us. Pray for those. There's things that we do, right, that are in the laws of God. And anything outside of that would be against the laws of God.
Right.
And against the teachings of Christ.
And I agree, but what if it goes against, what if, because... there's the classic, no human is illegal, and you and I both agree in general. General thing, not America.
General,
in general terms, no, there's not an illegal person. Like, you're a person. You're made in the image of God. You're wholly acceptable and whatnot.
Legality is only based upon man-made laws of districts of country, which Romans 13 says we have to abide by the law of the land. So in a way, we do have to submit to that.
And see, now you're proving my point with slavery. As slavery was legally, like, these people owned people. And we should say people shouldn't own people. In the laws of the land, the people in the north and in the Underground Railroad, they were going directly against the law. The Jews during the Holocaust who were hiding in people's homes, the people who were hiding them, Corrie ten Boom's family, went against the law. So at what point do we say, yes, it's acceptable to go against the law and completely disobey and disregard it?
When the laws of the land go against the laws of God.
Okay.
It's the same instance, right? But the law of the land to say, hey, unless you come in the correct channels, you can't come into this portion of the world. I don't see how that goes against the laws of God. But to say, I'm going to own you and mistreat you and misuse you, that goes against the laws of God. Now I can see going against that law, right? So there is an instance.
And pause, side note, I agree with you. I'm just pressing you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But we also see Philemon is a whole book written by Paul about
Go back
to your master, and it was a letter to the master to accept the slave back. Which
back as a brother, as a brother, not as a slave.
I am not trying to defend slavery. I just want to make that
it's a whole different context.
Because it was a different context back in that culture, in that day, in that time period, and that's something they dealt with. And Paul was dealing with it in the channels that he was allowed.
It would almost be like me as an employee, like as an employer, and I had an employee who ran away and stole money and did all these things, and you write me a letter and say, hey, this person's a brother, welcome them back and let's he confessed, let's figure this stuff out.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
it's the same type of context, right? And so it's working within the system that you're in, right? And that's what Paul was doing, right? That was an acceptable thing. Though I see many instances of Paul himself saying he is the servant or the slave of Christ. You know, he's comparing himself to that. That's how much of a servant he is. The context of servanthood was different back then than it is now.
Yep. And I will say I think there is good anger, and I think there's bad anger, as we talked about. Like, the bad anger is, I'm angry because you hurt me, and not like physically hurt me, but like you just hurt my ego, and this, I'm going to get back. And vengeance, right? You talk about that. Vengeance is what's wrong.
Right.
But I do think every amazing movement in the human story has to do about being angry over something. Like okay, so women care centers were created out of the anger of
the injustice for
the unborn. And like Beth with becoming a foster mom, it was the injustice that she saw that just stirred her heart. It's like, this is not okay. This is not acceptable. We got to step into the gap and do something about it.
Right.
Same with like what we do with supporting different ministries and different organizations.
But
and
Beth didn't go and start building down places.
She didn't go burn down Planned Parenthood.
And exactly. No. Well, that's what I'm saying. So
and I agree.
There's where you cross the line.
And that's vengeance.
That's vengeance
and malice.
Where we talked about anger being unrighteous, the quick, instant angry, but then it's what you do with that afterwards, whether it becomes a sin or not. Same instance here, right? You can be angry about it. I think it's a righteous anger. We should always hate injustice because God hates injustice. But what do we do about it? God clearly said vengeance is his, right?
Yep.
He will repay. We can't repay. That's not our place, right? Yes, we're upset about it, but we should only take a stance of being upset about it because it violates the laws of God. If we take a stance because it violates us or it violates what we think should happen, we could be right, but we could be wrong. I think the only time where it's a righteous anger is if it violates the laws of God and we are aligning with the anger that God has towards whatever that is.
I turn on airplane mode so I can't see the Wi-Fi. There is a verse somewhere. I don't remember what it was, but talking about the fact of hating the evil in the world and stuff like that. So here's a question though, because this kind of goes to our lens, like we've talked about before. You like to bring in the worldview lens.
Yep.
There's a lens that a lot of Christians have that get very angry. Specifically, we're gonna get politics here. Side note, pause. Beth and I, the more we complain about stuff, we pause and go, why are the older you get, the more you have opinions on things. But okay, because like I'm thinking about in today's culture, right?
Sure.
Generally speaking, I would say the right side of the political spectrum gets very angry over gun rights, gets very angry over obviously abortion and stuff like that.
Sure.
Angry over taxation.
Yep.
At what point do we actually say, no, that's an unrighteous anger? Like in my opinion, I'm the type where it's like, like the laws of the land do say this about gun rights. However, you can be angry about it and say, no, that's what the Constitution says. But how do you be angry and not sin? Because that's not a grievous injustice on you as a person, or the same idea of the other side, where it's the fact of businesses who get a lot of tax breaks and things like that. And I see it on both sides of the spectrum, where Christians get extremely angry about very heated political sided issues.
Yep.
So is there such a way of being angry about these issues but not sinning, or are we able to, are those unrighteous angers because we're trying to do something about it, or is that just how we're wired and we just have to make sure we control our mouths? And like what Andy Stanley says, we're not in it to win it. We're not in it to win anything.
So
I'm asking some big questions. I'm sorry.
No. So, I take the stance of we are here and we have a purpose as Christians, right? And that's to, one, subdue the earth, right? That was the general mandate given to Adam in the beginning of creation, right? Mm-hmm. Subdue the earth. And then likewise, Christ gave us a new mandate, which was to go and make disciples, right? Mm-hmm. And that's our two mandates. And so those mandates and the way those mandates are carried out can look different, right, than what you and I would probably say we would do, right? We would think of missions, take care of the widows and the orphans. These are the things that we think about. Some people think about, well, it's the political stance, right?
Don't tread on me, baby.
It's the bigger picture of that. If we have these rights established and we have these things, then the injustices can't happen, right? Mm-hmm. If we have abortion laws and we fight for those abortion laws and we're angry about it, we go to the polls, Roe versus Wade could get turned over, which it did, right? Because we put forth the effort for years and years and years into the political sphere. And, people and the injustice of murder happening. Well, if people had a right to bear arms and self-defend, maybe the murderer wouldn't murder as much or as many innocent lives because they had a way to defend themselves and protect others. So there's a different mindset. I'm not saying I agree or disagree.
No, I'm saying there's anger on both sides. Anger because of the injustice of people getting killed and whatnot. And the injustice of people not being able to defend. Like, there's anger on both sides.
Exactly. And so I think, again, what it comes back to is, yes, you can be angry at the injustice as long as it aligns with the laws of God and God's anger towards sin. But as soon as it becomes a vengeful or a thinking and dwelling upon ill will towards that person with a different political view and the political stance, mm-hmm. I think you've crossed a line. I think now you're into that unrighteous anger, right? I think of President Joe Biden, right? Mm-hmm. What are we supposed to do for our leaders?
Call him Uncle Joe and pray for him.
Pray for him. Thank you. So, can you, when you're in prayer, how long do you stay angry while you're in prayer? We see you put it in here. David was angry, pretty dang angry when he was praying. He
said, God, crush my enemies. Like, right. I'm like, whoa.
And people would be like, oh, see, it's okay. It's biblical because David said it. And it's like, well, David also had an affair with Bathsheba, but that doesn't mean it makes it right.
That's not recommended by RTC by any affair.
Just because David's crying out, God, crush my enemies, doesn't mean that that's what God did. And that was, again, a different circumstance at a different time where God was established a nation. And he was dwelling among that nation.
And I think there's also a cry for help, too. The fact of God, like I'm being pressed on all sides. God, just do something.
Sure.
Help me, please.
Sure.
And I feel that.
Right. Yeah, no, but it doesn't mean that it was done or that God said it was right, or it was just it was a crying out. It was a prayer. It was a look into somebody's prayer life is what mm-hmm. that was, right? It was a crying out. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's what that was. I think sometimes we look at too much of it and be like, well, it's okay because it's in the Bible and David said it. And it's like, well, you got to look at some other things David did too. Mm-hmm. But I think it all goes, again, I'm going to reiterate myself. It goes back to the righteousness and the laws of God. And they're pretty dang clear how we're supposed to treat friends, neighbors, enemies. There's a pretty clear path what we're supposed to do, and we have pretty clear mandates on what we're supposed to do. And I think depending on what avenue you go into, whether it's ministry, whether it's just day-to-day blue-collar work, whether it's white-collar business world, whether it's political sphere, there's ways to navigate that, and there's things to be angry at, and there's injustices that happen in each of those careers. And it's what do we do as Christians towards that? Do we allow our anger to become unrighteous anger, or do we stay aligned with God's anger? And though we're angry, we sin not, because we apply those laws and those teachings that Christ gave to us, and navigate the anger that way.
So then let's just end it here with having. I mean, it's going to be a probably longer end. We're making the rubber meet the road.
Sure.
All right. So how do we handle being angry at other people's actions? Like, what are things that we should do, practically speaking, application here of other people, either sin against us or their actions just cause us to get welled up with anger for whatever reason. And I don't care what the reason is. We just get angry about it.
Sure.
What are practical action steps that we can do?
Well, first of all, I want to say I'm preaching to the choir to myself.
I know. I'm saying here, man. That's why I'm not.
Because I many times at work, I'll get angry at my managers and I harbor on it, and then I sometimes even get a little conniving, like, well, they said to do this, and I'm just not going to do it, or I'm just going to go do this, and then that way I can have an excuse. So I'm just as guilty. It's not a holier than thou, which we've been accused of before. That's another story. I never get that accusation as much as we say how messed up we are. But some practical applications. I think number one, if you become angry, the very first thing you should do is look at why you're angry. Right? Number one, look at why you're angry. Am I angry because of an injustice being done to me, or am I angry because of a injustice that goes against the law of God? Right?
I would even say others too. Like, does it go against me? Does it go against others?
But others in what way? Right? And so is it I'm mad at them because they didn't get what they wanted? Well, is that a righteous anger? It could be. It could not be. It depends on the situation, right? So that's, first of all, self-examine, right? Examine, does it line up with the laws of God, or is it just self-gratification, or you think it's wrong that, somebody else didn't get something that they wanted, and it could be a good thing, or again, you got to take it case by case. So I would say self-examination. Number two, remember in all things, love, love, love. Love covers a multitude of sins. As a Christian, it's the greatest thing we are called to do. Christ said, there are two commandments I give to you. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love is the epitome of God's laws. And if you are in a place where you're angry and you cannot love, you're in a sinful anger. So, number one, again, I'm going to keep repeating myself. Self-examination. Two, are you loving? If not, it's time to stop being angry. It's time to do some repenting, because you're not in the right here. You've crossed over into that sin. Whether that was a justified anger or not, if you can't love in it, you are sinning yourself. So how can you call out the speck in your brother's eye if you got a plank in yours? You got to deal with that. And I would say number three would be, are these people of the world, or are these people of the faith? Because you're going to deal with those things differently, right? People of the world, you can't expect anything different. You can't expect them to follow the laws of God. They don't know the laws of God. But people of the faith, people that are claiming to be followers of Yahweh, there's a different there. This is where it gets back to can we judge others, right? We had an episode on this. We actually did the same. We did a shortened version of it at Ngeti Music Fest. We spoke on it in chapel.
Yep.
And this is where you got to, again, still speak the truth in love and deal with that issue, right? Because now we've done the self-examination. We're either doing it in love, doing it in not. So we're either dealing with ourselves, or we're moving forward in the dealing of the process. And now we're getting to the dealing part. In a unrighteous person, you have to deal with it according to the laws of the land the best you can. And you have to be prepared that they're not going to see it. They're going to continue on, and they are not going to change their ways or change their agenda. In which case, we'll get to number four. If it is a Christian brother, now you can deal with it and show them the laws of God, right? Why it's wrong in that instance. So number 4, so you've approached it, you're trying to work within the whatever laws, either God's laws or the law of the land. Nothing is changing. Now what do? You do whatever you can within God's law to stop it, right? So if a woman's being raped, right? If a woman's being raped, if I have to throw myself on that woman to keep her from being raped and take a beating or take death to try to protect her, I will.
Or just knock his lights out.
Or if I got to restrain him, knock his lights out, whatever is not going to kill him, right? Because I can't kill him.
But that's preserving a life.
But I have to defend the best I can within God's laws, right? In that instance. And I would say that person's not a believer. But if somebody is in a church and they're slapping their wife, one, I'm going to go restrain him. I'm probably not going to punch his lights out right away. But I'm going to restrain him and remind him that he is supposed to love his wife as Christ loves the church. And does Christ slap the church around like he's slapping his wife? And then I would say, you need to take some time and go away, and we will find a safe place for your wife to be. And I have to file a police report on this as well. And you carry out, again, working within God's laws and the laws of the land. And you start that process, right? And so there's different, depending on the circumstance you have to, again, we'll go over the 4 steps, right? Self-examination. Again, part of that is the love, number 2. Number 3, are they a believer or are they an unbeliever? Because that's going to dictate your action. And then number 4, you've got to act.
Dang, that was good. You didn't even prep that. That's not even in the notes.
Off the top of my head.
I love it. Well, as I was asking that question, listening to you talk, one specific verse popped in my head, and I'm going to read it from the New King Jimmy. The New King Jimmy. That's how I know. Actually, the King James version is hilarious.
Welcome, Dad. He's reading from the King Jimmy.
The actual King Jimmy is hilarious because it makes zero sense. But
you should read it then.
Okay, here's the King Jimmy version. He hath showed thee, oh man, what is good? And then it's the normal stuff. But the New King Jimmy said, I lost it.
Wait, what's the normal stuff?
I'll tell you in a second. But the New King Jimmy says, he has shown you, oh man, what is good. In other words, he like God has shown you what is good. But what does the Lord require of you but to that's a typo. But it says seek justice or do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Yeah. And, after sitting on that jury duty case and that jury duty trial months ago, I guess it was a couple months ago, I asked the judge that question. I don't know if I talked about this on the show or not.
Better be careful what you say so you don't, end up with the lawsuit.
No, but I asked the judge, I said, you see the worst of humanity.
Sure.
You see the best of humanity. You see all of it. And I'm like, how do you, because I was starting to kind of pick up the vibes of like, I think you're a Christian based on what you say, because you've been dropping some little Christian things.
Little hints.
And so I said, how do you deal with it
Sure.
and keep your soul okay? Like, how do you keep your own self, your mental health, your all these things? Because, you could see this and just, for lack of a better word, just be like, I hate people because this is what it is. And I said, how do you deal with this every single day? And she said, well, my life motto, my life verse is from Micah when he said, you know what is good and what is to do good, but to seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly. And it's not a bad thing to seek justice. And the church has been notoriously sucky about that in terms of, hiding and moving people around, whether it's whatever circles you're in, for sex offenders or for swindlers or for con artists or whatever. The church is like, oh, we've already taken care of it. He's seeking forgiveness of Jesus. Stay out of it, law.
Right.
It's totally good. And we see people crying for justice all over the place. And it's not a bad thing to seek justice, but there's also, and she said, so the judge said, I like the goal is to seek justice for both the accuser and the accused, for the victim and the what'd you call it? The plaintiff and defendant, whatever you want to do. We need to seek justice for all people, but you also need to love mercy as well. Yep. And, who deserves more mercy than the person by which has received the most mercy? We see that Jesus, the person who's been forgiven much, forgives much. And if we truly understand what we've been forgiven of as Christians, we should be able to show mercy and forgive others. But then lastly, it's walk humbly.
Yep.
And she says, but by the grace of God, that could be me.
Right.
And so I think that's part of it with our anger is we got to look at it and be like, yes, it's okay to seek justice like what you said. But we also have to love mercy and walk humbly, knowing that, if we let this fester, either A, that could be us, or B, we want to make sure that we are, quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, because that's how it is to walk humbly with that. Because so many times, like the joke is always on the playground, it's not the person who did the first action that gets caught, it's the second person.
Right.
And so many times when we respond in anger, that's when all the bad things happen, and we lash out and do the wrong action, and we go to physical violence or verbal violence or abuse, or even just little things like I don't know, just being unkind, saying something where it's like I was the other day I said something to Beth and I said I was in a wrong frame of mind when that came out, and I am very sorry.
Sure.
Like, no excuses. I can make excuses, but I screwed up. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like that's owning up to it. So with the righteous anger, I think there is things to be righteous anger about, like what you said. But so many times when we just get angry, I think, we got to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves.
Well, you got to remember,
check yourself before you wreck yourself.
If it's a righteous anger, there's a way to deal with it. And Galatians 6 speaks about it, and it talks about if you see a brother sinning, speak to him in gentleness and love, so that ye yourself may not fall into the same temptation, right?
And if you save someone, what does it say? And if you brought them out of that sin, you've saved them from death or something like that, right?
So, exactly. Yes, Romans 6, or not Romans, Galatians 6. And so that's the thing to remember when dealing with things that are non-physical or non-life-threatening, right? When you do them for things. But, so that's where I'm at.
I like
I'm done.
it. Well, let's put a period on this thing and do some fun facts before we get out of here. Sound good?
Sound good.
Time for Fun Facts with Filler.
I gotta do the symbol of the cross because I gotta hope that I can say this word.
But why are you doing this? Why are you doing Father, Son, Holy Spirit over here, homie? But dude, that was a pretty heavy episode by the end of this. I didn't think it was gonna be this heavy.
I liked it though. It was a good episode.
That was a good soul searching one, dude. But we have had, what number is this? 188?
Yeah.
Dude, you've had 186 fun facts because you've only repeated twice. You've been kicking out.
But I had extra bonus episodes.
That's true. So we've had close to 200 fun facts, and they've all been amazing. So I have a feeling this was gonna be just as good, buddy.
All right, today's fun fact, if I can say the word, the anitadeophobia.
What?
Is the fear of being watched by a duck.
Okay, people. Is that for real?
A person with anitadeophobia fears that somewhere in the world a duck or a goose is watching him or her. And it didn't put on here, but there was a case of this happening to a woman, and I forget, it was the early 2000s, where she was actually diagnosed with this, but she ended up overcoming it because her daughter had a love of ducks.
That is, I'm not gonna lie, that is ridiculous. You need help. Am I allowed to say that?
Anitadeophobia.
Am I allowed to say that? Was that a little mean? That might have been a little mean because we all need a little bit of help. But the fear
it's a long word.
I mean,
fear of ducks.
I have a fear of being pooped on.
But it's not just a fear of ducks. It's a fear of being watched by ducks.
That's what I'm saying. Like I peeked a little bit. I got an idea of fear of ducks or fear of birds. I get that. I have a fear of being pooped on by a bird. Don't ask me. It's just a fear I've had since I was like 5.
But being watched by a duck? Like quack, quack, I'm watching you.
You can watch me. I don't give a rip.
I can see that duck going like this.
like Mighty Ducks almost,
like
or like Donald Duck. Like, I'm watching you.
I'm watching you.
But the fear of, that's
really,
the fear
really
of
being watched by a
fear
duck.
of being watched by a duck.
Anitadeophobia.
I might be afraid of being watched by a duck, but you know what I'm not afraid of? People watching us on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, so in case you did not know, we are over in YouTube land. I know many of you guys do tune into the show. Obviously, there's better podcasts with better gear and better quality of video and whatnot.
Yeah.
But you know what? We're here. We're having good conversations. So if you're not watching on YouTube, make sure you head over there, subscribe, hit that bell notification.
Ding.
Oh, I mixed it up on you. So that way you can be notified about anything new coming to the tube.
And there will be new things coming to the tube here shortly, as we are currently working on content that will be YouTube exclusive
Fuller's
only.
working on content.
When Mr. Marc is taking care of his baby, we will be doing podcasts on YouTube only. So if you haven't gone over, you better get over there because that's coming up here soon.
But in the process, make sure you check us out on Instagram and Facebook. Join us in the RTC Facebook community. You can find all the fun stuff just by searching Real Talk Christian Podcast on Facebook, liking all the things, joining all the things. But if you have a question that you would like us to answer here on the show, don't hesitate to email us, text us, or message us in any way, shape, or form. And you can get all of that information over at our website at realtalkchristianpodcast.com.
Yes, sir.
Anything else we need to share with these wonderful people?
I don't think so, sir.
I love it, man. Well, hey, leave us a rating review. Share this episode with somebody. It's been awesome hanging out with you guys again this week. But just like always, until next time,
take it easy.